So for an administrator navigating from home, you're going to click the gear wheel next to the search bar and select Users and System Administration. So when you first scroll down to System Administration, about halfway down the page, you'll see Customize, so let's start there. So first we'll start with Header. So this is where you can change the logo that shows up on the top left of the header bar, and then also the URL that's linked to that logo. So when deciding on a URL, you can choose to link to your company's website or maybe a site your employees are often accessing. And then when you're all set making those changes, make sure to click Save. Next is the login page. So here you can edit what displays on your login page. So when you first sign up, the default is a gray background. So this feature allows you to add in a fun image that ties into your company. And then you can also change the welcome text. So this text will display above the login box when users are signing in. The default welcome text is your company's name as entered when you signed up for your account. And then once you upload your file or change your welcome text, click Save. And now we'll go down to our security settings and start with login security settings. So here we have autocomplete login name. So when this is checked, this will auto-populate the login names. So the reason this notice pops up is because it's leaking the login name to anyone who has your subdomain URL. So this could potentially make it easier for someone to access your subdomain, and therefore it is advised if you choose to use this, you should also configure some type of authentication for your subdomain, which we'll go over in a little bit. Next, we have Save Login Name and Password. So when this is checked, this will allow the web browser to save your login name and password. Please note that the web browser settings do take precedence over this, so this setting will only work for those using specific web browsers. So if your users are using Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, they will still be able to save their login name and password in the web browser, even when the setting's disabled here. And then next we have automatic login. So you'll select allow users to skip login step to enable automatic login. So in the remember me for drop down, select the period of time for which the system remembers the user's login information. You can choose 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. And then we'll go down to password policy. So first we have self-service change. So when this is checked, this will allow your users to change their own password on the change password page in their account settings. For forced password change, when this is checked, this will force the user to reset their password after their first login or after a password change. So this just means they will be forced to create their own password instead of keeping the temp password that was given to them in their login initially. And then next we have self-service reset. So when this is checked, this will allow users to reset their own password by clicking Forgot Your Password on the login page. So if it's unchecked, your users are unable to reset their password on their own. They will need to contact a Kintone administrator to reset the password in their user profile of user administration. So this is now automatically checked by default when you create your subdomain. So if this is not set, it may be because you opened your account prior to the update that made this a default setting. We'll go down to user password minimum length. So you'll set this to require a certain password length for your users. And then administrator password minimum length. This will be set to require a certain password length for your administrators. And then password complexity. For none, there's no requirements. For combination of letters and numbers, the password must be a mix of letters and numbers. And then for a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols, your password must be a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols. Login name as password. So when checked, you are allowing your users to use their login name as their password. When unchecked, they can't use their login name as their password. Password reuse limit. So this determines when your users can reuse a password they had prior. You can set this up to 15. This means that they can't reuse their password until their 16th password change if you were to choose 15. Passwords expire in, so you can force your users to change their password after 30, 60, 90, 180 days, a year, or unlimited, which would mean never. Now we'll go to account lockout. So number of failed attempts before account lockout. So you can choose the amount of times there's a failed login before the user is completely locked out. And you can choose never or between 3 and 10 attempts. Next, we'll go to account lockout duration. So this is how long the account will remain locked out. So you can choose 3, 15, 30, 60 minutes, or never. Session settings. So here you can set the session lifetime, which determines how long users can stay logged in without any activity, without getting logged out. Next, we have additional message on login failure. So here you can set up a message that will display when a user enters their password incorrectly. Mine says, please contact Larissa, your Kintone administrator, at larissa@kintone.com. She will assist in helping you regain access to your account. So it's just a nice little message to have so that your users know exactly where to go when they need help logging into their account. And that will be their Kintone administrator, who can then go up to that user's profile in Departments and Users and change that password for them manually. And then lastly, we have SAML authentication. So when this is checked, this will enable users to set up SAML authentication. And when you're all set changing these settings, you'll click Save. So now we're going to go to Access Control. So here you can configure IP address restriction and basic authentication to enhance your security. So setting these restrictions will block access from public networks to access your domain. It is recommended you configure basic authentication as well as IP address restrictions. So basic authentication provides a double authentication by login name and password. So first it requires a valid username and password to access the login page, and then it will require a login name and password to access the Kintone subdomain. And then through IP address restrictions, you can control who has access to Kintone by specifying IP addresses. So if you add the IP address of your office network to the Allow Access list, then you can block all other addresses. So let's take a look at how to set this up. So we're going to click Configure Now. And then under IP address restrictions, we'll click Change. And then you can choose one of the following. So you can choose Allow All. So this will allow anyone access to your subdomain. Basic authentication won't be available when this is set because you're allowing everybody. And then you can choose Deny All. So basic authentication or client certificate authentication is required for this. This means that no one will have access to the login page of your domain without one of those two. And then we have Allow Specific IP Addresses. So all users using the IP address will be able to access Kintone without basic authentication or client certificate authentication. Those outside of the specified IP address will require one. And let me show you what it looks like when you deny all. So when we deny all, once you hit Save, it now allows you to change the username and password for basic authentication. So you'll just hit Change. And then when you're all set, changing the username and password, you're going to click Save again. So with these settings that I currently have, you can't access my subdomain login page unless you first enter this username and password in the pop-up that shows up when you try to access my login page. And then if you choose Allow Specific IP Addresses, you will need to enter the IP address you want to allow. The implications of this setting are users can access services only from this network, and you can't set this if you are using mobile devices that are connected to public networks. So if you'd like people from public networks to still be allowed to access your domain, you will need to set basic authentication or client certificates for them or for the device. So if you ever try setting this up and you find you're unable to access your account, you can also change these settings by logging into the Kintone store. So if you ever change these settings and can't seem to get back into your account from what you've set, don't worry, you can change them from store.kintone.com. Now we'll go back over to our system administration settings and we'll go to session settings. So here you can enable and disable clickjack protection. So clickjacking is an attack that makes a user click on a link that takes you to a different site. So you think it's one thing, but it's actually just bait to get you to click. So when clickjack protection is enabled, no one can create phony links on your domain, and this protects you from entering harmful sites and also information leakages. And now we'll go down to client certificates. So client certificate authentication is an authentication service that uses the client certificate issued by the system administrator to individual users. So only devices with a client certificate installed can access Kintone from public networks. So you can issue or specify different client certificates for each user. And then even if a user loses a device that has a client certificate installed, you can prevent access to Kintone from the device by disabling that specific client certificate. So client certificate, it's going to be more secure than the basic authentication, and you can purchase this for your users for an additional charge of $5 per month per user. To use this feature, you must first configure IP restrictions in basic authentication and access control, which we just reviewed, and you will then be able to enable this feature for each user. So to enable this, you will edit the user's profile up here in Departments and Users. And then you're going to click the Client Certificate Authentication box. So that's going to be right here. And then you can save that when it's all set. And you can also do this for multiple users via Services and Users in the User Administration. Just come down here, select the service, and then decide who you want to allow this access to. So we'll go to Create and Download now. So this is where you will create and download each user's certificate. So to view users who are authorized to use client certificates, select a department from the list. So it looks like for the customer success department, okay, so it looks like for the marketing department, Michael Scott is the only one who has client certificate enabled. So we'll just go down to show all users. So once you select from the department, you can then choose one of these options. You can choose to see unissued. So this is a list of users who have this feature enabled but do not have a certificate. We have valid. So this will show a list of users who have a valid client certificate. And then we have expired, which would show users with an expired client certificate. So to issue, you're going to check the name of the person you would like to create a certificate for. And then you'll click Create. If you want to reissue a new certificate, you're going to check the box Remove Existing Certificates before reissuing them. Keeping this box clear will allow the old certificates to still be valid. So after you click Create, the user is going to be moved to the Valid section. So to download their certificate, you're going to check the box next to their name, and then you'd click Download. And then you can also choose to create a new certificate from this Valid section as well. So next we're going to go to Download Permissions. So when checked, you're allowing your users to download their client certificate. They can find the certificate under the Mobile Access tab in their account settings. This tab will only show in the profile settings for users who have a client certificate created for them, and that's available to use. So next we're going to go to Audit Logs. So we'll start with View and Download Audit Logs. So you're going to use this page to view, filter, and download audit logs. So the system records all actions made by users in Kintone. You can export audit logs up to 6 weeks ago to a CSV file containing up to 100,000 log records. The system archives audit logs older than 6 weeks. So with this top portion, you can filter out the log record you're trying to find. And you can find a more detailed list of all the audit log details that you can monitor in our Kintone Help Center. So you're going to click Download Logs 6 weeks or older to download those archived logs. And then down here is where you can see all of the logs that you were filtering out. Next, we'll go down to Settings. So here you can set the retention period of audit logs, specify email addresses to receive audit log notifications, and specify the format of the exported logs. So there are 2 levels of logs. So you have notice and you have information. The notice level is higher and more important to note than something that would be at the information level. So if you change this to send email, you will be instructed to type in one or more email addresses separated by line breaks. If you check the box send test email, you will get a test email sent upon saving. And then you can also choose the retention period here. So choose 6 weeks or 1 to 10 years. The default is set to 3 years, and this will determine how long an audit log will be saved for. And then lastly, you can choose an export format. So this will determine the format when downloaded in the last section, view and download. The default here is Excel, but you can choose CSV in English or Japanese as well. So next, we're going to go to System Mail Account. So this is one step you come by when you're setting up email notifications for Kintone. You can have emails sent based on app and audit log triggers you have set up. In order to receive the notification, an email must be associated with the user's name and their profile, located here. You can edit a user's profile in that Departments and Users section. So you can choose between built-in or external. So built-in, this is a free mail server installed in Kintone. When you use built-in, the emails will come from noreply@kintone.com and they will be sent unencrypted. By entering an email in test email, the email address will receive a test email. And if you don't receive the email, go down here and check in the system email failure history. And then we have external mail account. This allows you to set up an email that will come from your own server. So if you choose this option, you will need to fill out your system information to set this up. And then you'd come down here and click Save once finished. And then again, for this one, you do have the option to send a test email. And if you don't receive that email, you can come down here and check the system email failure history. So this failure history will show you the latest 10 email sending failures within the past month. So the error column there is going to display a link that you can access to view an HTML page with an explanation of the message. And then note if the sending failure of the test email does not appear on this page, just try re-entering the test email address and refreshing the page. And now we'll go to localization. So here you can set the system time zone and language for your domain. You can choose your time zone from this dropdown. And then our supported languages are Japanese, English, and simplified Chinese. Now we'll go to integrations. So here you can enable integrations with third-party services. So if enabled, the services can obtain and use data from Kintone. So currently you can integrate with Microsoft Flow, Google Hangouts Chat, and then Slack. So to enable, you're going to click this here. And then you can set allowed users by clicking this set allowed users in the pop-up. So let's take a look at that. So all you'll do here is you'll just select who you want to have access to this service, and then you'll click Save. And then lastly, we're going to go down to Contact Us. So this is a super easy way for you to contact support from your subdomain. So you'll just choose the topic of your question, and then you'll just fill out this form. So this is going to tell me exactly who the question's from and from what subdomain they're asking from. Additionally, you can always send an email to support@kintone.com, and that too will create a ticket for you. So this concludes our training on system administration.